Threezero is taking a trip back to Cybertron. Here's your look at the Threezero Transformers MDLX Optimus Prime. The Transformers MDLX Optimus Prime measures 7 inches tall, with approximately 48 points of articulation and die-cast metal frame. Accessories include Ion Blaster, Energon Axe, Autobot Matrix of Leadership, and 5 pairs of interchangeable hands. MDLX is a new series of articulated figures capturing the spirit of Threezero's renowned DLX series at a smaller scale with a similar high range of articulation and great durability. We'll be looking at Prime more in a moment. First, though, I'd like to thank the folks over at Threezero that did provide this early sample of the new MDLX Optimus Prime that we could have a look in this video. Many of the online sites currently that show the pre-order for this show the release date of being the second quarter of 2022. So I would imagine he would start to ship soon. And the price point for MDLX Optimus Prime is $79.99. Now, he doesn't transform, no. But for $79.99, what you are getting is a very detailed figure with tons of posability. Grabbing now the tape measure just to see how tall the figure stands. I'm going to start things first with inches. I don't know why, for some reason, we always seem to start with inches. Optimus Prime stands at 6.5 inches in height. And to spin that around, the figure stands about 17 centimeters tall. And while that doesn't seem very tall, he is certainly a lot taller than the earlier looked at MDLX Bumblebee, which we can bring in right now. As it would be normally the case, Bumblebee would always be a shorter Autobot anyways. In this case, he goes to about maybe the grill section of Prime's front torso. Again, we've already had a look at this figure. Don't transform, no, but very posable figures. I was a big fan, actually, of this Bumblebee. He did come with 2 swappable head sculpts, one that had the eyes and the mouth. I actually decided to have him displayed with more of the grill on the front, replicating his original 80s Generation 1 toy. For his accessories, Prime actually does do better than Bumblebee, not only coming including with his Ion Blaster, his Energon Axe, the backpack for his torso, the Matrix of Leadership, and not to mention a ton of hands as well. Even though I really did already run through all the things that came included with the figure, yes, we will be looking at those individually so you guys can see what they look like up close and personal. First, though, I would always recommend, when first getting figures like this, as detailed as they are, to always first look through the instruction guide. And in this case, it's not so much a guide as it's a single sheet that's printed on both the sides. The front side, or at least this side that we're looking at, shows the Prime with all of his different various accessories, shows you how to pull off the front torso, at least the front panel of his torso, to insert the Matrix of Leadership, and then continuing the rest of it is all more just articulation, showing the various different ways, the limitations, even though this figure really doesn't have much in the way of limitations. I'm going to put that to the side. The figure also, like I said, comes included, starting things first with the accessories, the smallest of the batch, he comes included with the Matrix of Leadership. I can't tell really which is the front and which is the back. They are the same, what I can see, on both the sides. Nice silver, you've got some additional gold added in there as well. And then the center jewel seems to be a translucent blue. Really nice. In a way, I wish this could have illuminated, like the inner section of his torso could light up. But still, though, you can take the Autobot's Matrix of Leadership. Now, he actually does come with a couple of hands that, if you wanted to have him holding it, these hands are pretty pliable enough, but if you're having any issues, you can certainly heat them up in water. But he does have hands for holding the Autobot's Matrix of Leadership. And then what you can actually do as well is you can bring his arms around. As I said, the figure is quite posable, and he can actually hold the Autobot's Matrix of Leadership. Just like that. You would just imagine that the Autobot's Matrix of Leadership would be in the middle of that. What you can also do, too, is you can take the front section off. Now, I would have assumed it would have come off right here, but it actually includes the lights as well. So when you are pulling it, I would probably suggest pulling it from the sides. Just detach it from either side. I think this would be a good place to put a magnet in, for example. And it does seem like there are magnets there, yes, but it also uses supported clips. The clips are on either side, and I almost don't even feel like a case like this clips were even necessary. The magnets maybe could have been a little bit bigger, but I would think that the magnets would be more than enough to keep that in place without having to rely on clips. Just because the clips are so small, I'd be worried that they would break if you're not too careful and remove it too quickly. Anyways, you can detach that, take the Autobot's Matrix of Leadership, and carefully slide it in to the little section there on the front. Now, in the 86 movie, this would have folded up, and that matrix of leadership would have been inside. In this case, though, it actually is very, very much in plain sight, although it's a little harder to see through the smoke-colored windows. Then from there, you're just going to reattach this part here. Again, it does have magnets, but I almost feel like magnets would be more than enough. It stays well enough in place without using those clips, just again, for the risk that that could break. Putting the figure down here for a second. Actually, you know what? One thing we'll also look at is it comes included with the jetpack. A nice looking jetpack, actually. They've off-colored it, so it's not a very bright red. In fact, that's one thing I really like about this line, is that they don't make these figures super bright. Prime is of the primary red, and then Bumblebee's the primary yellow, but then they've really added some wear and tear to the paint. And also the jetpack can be included in that as well. It does have pegs on the back, so what you'll do is pick the figure up, and then located on the back here, there's actually little slots. Just take the jetpack and attach it into the top. Now, whereas the front did have magnets, again, I feel like the back probably could have done the exact same thing with using magnets as well, so that you didn't have to put them in, slot them into those provided openings. Just like I said, attaches onto the back of Prime. It does give him a little extra volume there also on the back of his torso. Like, he's a pretty beefy looking bot anyways, but if you did want to have some extra little, just a little filler there on the back of his torso, the jetpack certainly will help for that. The figure comes included also with his ion blaster. It's kind of more a metallic gunmetal gray than it really is a black, but it certainly does have all the boxes checked for what the ion blaster should really look like. And it's quite long too. I mean, really, when you put it next to Prime, it goes way past the area of his waist. He does also come included with a couple of hands for holding. Well, actually, you know what? We'll have a look at all the hands anyways. It comes with some gripping hands, trigger firing hands specifically for the ion blaster. He comes included with some gripping hands for holding the Energon axe. I know we haven't yet looked at. We will be looking at shortly. Another couple of pairs of gripping hands. Actually, these hands specifically, you see the way the thumbs are closer towards the fingers. These are more suitable for holding the Autobots matrix of leadership. He comes also with some leadership pointing hands. He doesn't, granted, have to be a leadership in order to point and instruct somebody, but he's a leader and he does things well. He actually comes with some pointing hands, giving some instructions. And then he also comes with these hands. Now, looking at these hands, I know we're going to get back to the ion blaster here in a second. These hands I thought would have been gestured in the sense that, you know what, let's grab the figure right now. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Just detaching the hand and putting the appropriate hand in place. Just attaching it like this. One problem, actually, I can already tell you that I have with this particular figure, and believe me, the list is small when it comes to criticisms, is like this ball peg right here for the wrist always shifts around. I guess it's really doing what it's supposed to be doing. It's doing its job after all. But the problem with when trying to put the hand in place is every single time you're trying to move it onto the peg, the ball post decides it wants to move around. You almost have to apply less pressure and more twist the hand onto the post to get it in place. It's not even really a case either where you need to heat the hand. It's more just the idea that the post shifts around when you're trying to get it in place. But the idea, though, is if once you get the hand in, if you put the hand in appropriately, I feel like the hand is actually better for holding stuff. Like he's offering up, a sign of peace for the humans, for example. If you have the hand up this way, I feel like now I really have to put the hand properly on the post. Bear with me here. Like I said, you just have to twist the hand. I suppose you could heat the hand, soften up the hole of the peg or where the peg's going to fit into, and that might make things just a little bit easier. But it's the only thing that drives me, not bananas necessarily, but it's certainly something I find is an issue with this figure. And it's not anything really to do. There's no fault to the post. Like I said, it's doing the job it needs to do. But yes, getting the hand in place finally. I think it looks actually better for offering up peace, as opposed to if you spin the hand around. I thought initially it could be for like a gesture, like Prime is doing like one of those really cool robot poses. The problem with the hand, though, is the way they've got the fingers angled down like this, it doesn't look natural. That's why I think looking at this specific hand, I think it's more so to be like a peace hand than anything else. All that time to put the hand in place, only just to remove the hand anyways. As I said, going back to the ion blaster, like I said, he does come included with a hand specifically for the job. Let's just grab one that actually is going to be for this side. And then because the hand plastic is pretty soft, you really don't even have to heat the hands for this. You can easily just pry the fingers away from the palm. Anyways, once the hand is in place around situated around the handle portion. Let's try this again. So again, just putting it onto the post. I had done this one so many times before that maybe even like the plastic is a little bit bigger now onto the hole. But yeah, like every single time this seems to be the case. Trying to pop that onto the post, that post seems to continue on moving around on me. Again, we're just going to twist this just a little bit here. Do we have it in place? I feel like we have it in place. That's what Prime looks like with the Ion Blaster. I mean, like, look at the size of this compared to the scope of how big Prime actually is. It's 3/4 the length of the bot. While he is actually holding that, not so much. The one last thing he actually comes also included with is the Energon axe, and I love the look of this. Traditionally, Energon axes for Optimus Prime generally are solely created from Energon, so usually they're all orange. In this case, you can actually see like there's a true handle happening here, and only the Energon portion, the part that's energy, is just the blade itself and then the back spike. This has been done nicely with a translucent orange plastic, and again, you've got some nice decent paint happening here. The gunmetal gray, but then you've got a brushing of silver over top of that. And like I said, he does have the hand for holding it. It's just the biggest problem is trying to get his hand in properly into the forearm here. Again, you can just take the hands. Now, one thing I do wish, though, about the axe was that there's a separation point somewhere on here. Nowhere, it seems, on the handle is there a part where you can separate the front half, the top half, to the bottom half, because you've got this little spike right here. So you can't slide it down necessarily to the hand. What you need to do is just, again, take the hand, move the plastic. It's pretty soft, so you're not going to have too much problem with that. And then just get the hand around that, just like that. That's the easiest of the two. The harder of the jobs, I'm not going to do this, don't worry. I'm not going to do this the third time around, but yeah, just going to plug that onto the post. It's almost the case where I feel like they didn't even need to have, not going to spend too much time more talking about this, but I almost feel like they didn't necessarily need to have a swiveling peg right there. I think you would have still done a fine enough job if they had made like the hole a little bit larger and this post a little bit bigger. I don't even think they needed to put articulation right there. It's the only thing that I think could have been changed on Optimus Prime to improve the figure, because again, like when you're putting articulation right here, it's fine to have that. It's nice to say it has it, but then every single time you go to try to put the hand on it, that post keeps continuing to shift on you. While I may not be so happy the way the hands have to be changed on Optimus Prime, overall the figure does deliver exactly what I would want. A classic looking Optimus Prime. I mean, just look at the head alone. Bumblebee's design veered slightly off course from the original Generation 1 source material. Not to say that these designs have to be so firmly rooted in Generation 1 designs, but while looking at Bumblebee and then looking now to Optimus Prime right away is recognizable. They didn't veer too far off course when it came to his design, keeping really like the core concept of Prime very much intact. I mean, like just his head sculpt alone. There's nothing really I would have changed to that head sculpt. It doesn't, granted, have illuminated eyes. There's nothing that lights these eyes up, but the bright color of blue that they use for the eyes, even far enough away, you can see they're brightly standing out. I do like the way that they've added some extra detailing in there as well. So while still sticking to a classic 80s looking Prime, there's enough certain detail that they've also added in there as well that modernizes the look and feel of Prime here also. Now, it does have, again, like those smoked windows here on the front. Doesn't bother me too much the fact that they did do that, because if anything, if they had made this clear, what you'd only be seeing inside is the Autobot Matrix of Leadership. And for me, I find the Autobot Matrix of Leadership is so overdone. So I actually kind of like the idea that they've used a more smoke-tinted glass, or plastic in this case, for the front of his windows here. You can actually see that they did put on windshield wipers. A small little touch of detail. I really like the fact that they did do that. They could have, granted, have gone in there and painted this silver, but I think it keeps things consistently black. If they had added this as silver, then you'd only be seeing, like from a far enough distance away, these little lines of silver. Probably wouldn't have been very effective. He does have his Autobot logos there on either sides of his shoulders. The smokestacks, again, all classic looking Optimus Prime. And just again, to spin the figure around, nothing really feels reinvented here for Prime. And I don't think a character like Optimus Prime really needs to be invented. Reinvented is in the case like this. Whereas Bumblebee, again, we're just going to move over Prime here for a second, bringing back the Bumblebee. there was, again, some allowances made, I think, for his design. He has one thing that Prime doesn't seem to have, and all these little scratches, as you can see, like the panel lining added to Bumblebee, doesn't seem anywhere to be the case on Optimus Prime. Instead, they kind of kept things very much clean to the way they've painted the figure. He has the more traditional red, and again, the striping there that you would see on the classic cartoon design. But then added on to there as well is all the brushing of like black paint just to fill in some of those nooks and crannies. There are a few little areas that I can pinpoint, some little notches and panel lining, but not to the extent that we got with Bumblebee. And I kind of like that they pulled it back a little bit more for Optimus Prime. He's big, he's boxy, he's got classic looking design colors all the way around. I like the way his legs are designed. He's got the little vents there on the fronts of his legs. His boot flaps, would you consider them necessarily boot flaps, do stick a little further up on the boots or on his feet. But that certainly will allow some articulation. Lots of articulation on this guy that we'll talk more about in a second. Yeah, I'm really, really happy with the way that Optimus Prime turned out here. Whether you decide to display him with jetpack or not. I mean, even like just to remove it, it looks still finished. You can see there's, slots that this would have been in the place of. It does make him a little flat, on the back. So maybe I think for the purpose of displaying this guy on a shelf, I would probably recommend for myself at least to attach the backpack. Just like I said, it does add some extra volume on the back of his torso. For the articulation here on Optimus Prime, let's run through it. There's really quite a lot to cover off here. The head is on a ball joint. So right off the bat, there's a ball joint right at the top here that allows the head to look down. Well, doing this, one unfortunate thing is like the head is going to be on a ball joint, but any bit of movement that I do this way is more on the actual ball joint that's at the base of the neck, not at the top of the head. But he does technically have two ball joints, one here and then one further down at the bottom section of his neck. So between the two, they're kind of sharing things collectively. You can actually get quite a lot of posability going for Optimus Prime. This Prime actually kind of reminds me of like those original model kits that you would snap together and you would get, as a resulting of it, a very posable figure. There has been cases of Prime in the past, one of which that I did want to pick up, never got the chance to get. I'm sort of getting that now here with the one that we get from Threezero. Now, for his arms, they do rotate all the way around. They are on a ball joint. You sort of can see where the way they peg into place on that ball joint, they rotate all the way around. If you did want to bring his arms out, what you'll do is take the tops of his shoulders and you'll hinge those outward just to free up the necessary space to then bring his arms out. So if you did want to, for example, be shooting a Decepticon from far enough away off to his side, you can certainly do that as well with Optimus Prime. The only thing about it, though, is you do periodically have to sort of shift the shoulders back up. Figure does have a bicep swivel, if you would consider that certainly on a bicep for a robot. He has only a single hinge on the elbow. Not that he really necessarily needed more than that. For the sake of this, you'll excuse me, I'm not going to rotate his hand all the way around because I'm sure his hand's going to pop back off the ball joint. But he does have, take my word for it, a ball joint. I know, we've already covered that off. The figure has an upper torso ball joint. Quite a lot of range of motion that you can get with the upper torso. And the figure does also have a secondary ball joint right at the base here. Now for his legs, it's best advised to move the skirting up here. So you can get those out of the way. Just because when you are moving his legs, you can move these back also as well. I don't know if I would necessarily consider this articulation. I guess we could consider that articulation. You can move those out, and that will allow the legs to do almost a full Van Damme splits. And then, of course, you can take the legs and move them forward. You can move them back. Quite a lot going on here for Prime. And yeah, you can drop the legs down, as we've seen the case before with other Threezero releases. He does have that functionality too. Figure has, I wouldn't consider a double hinge, but what I would consider is a full range of motion for the legs. The flaps here can also come out, so that sort of assists to allow the legs to hinge back and forth this way, and also up and down, and then just bring those back down. The figure does also have toe articulation too. Really, really happy with how, again, this figure turned out. Just get Prime situated here, or standing in this case. And once again, we'll bring back in the Bumblebee that we looked at before. Really, though, when you're looking at the two figures, while they do look like they could belong of the same line, Bumblebee notably does have, again, that panel lining that doesn't seem to be the case on Optimus Prime. It could also be the case, too, that Bumblebee is also that lighter lemon yellow. Maybe that's one of the reasons why they did go in there and panel line, just to add some extra detailing that may have not already been there. Prime doesn't get that necessarily, but what he does get, though, is classic-looking Generation 1 designs and colors. Very recognizable accessories that also come included with the figure. Again, the only issue I really have with the figure is not the way he's designed necessarily. I guess you could count this as the design element. It's just the ball joints on the hands. Just changing out the hands. I might just permanently keep one hand, a gripping hand on one side of his forearm, and maybe do the exact same thing on the other side so that they're always there. And I don't have to worry about swapping out the hands. If you decide to display this figure with any accessories, you are going to probably have some problems with those posts shifting around. I gotta still wonder, could they not have just replaced that shifting post with instead just a solid post with ball joint? And I think the hands would work the exact same way. One correction I did want to make is something I did say in this review. Optimus Prime does in fact, like his knees, have double hinges in his elbows. So if you did want to get a stoic pose with him actually holding the Energon axe over his shoulder like I've got right now, you can do it, as the figure does have more posability than earlier stated. I really like the look of this Optimus Prime. I would imagine we aren't going to be stopping things off with just the Prime and the Bumblebee that we've gotten already. Considering how successful and popular I think this line is going with so far with collectors that have picked up the Bumblebee, I gotta imagine that they're probably going to be releasing more of these. Now, the thing about it though is so far if you're taking a tally, we've only got 2 Autobots. There's got to be some Decepticons thrown in there at some point. And considering that they don't have to transform into anything, you're not sacrificing the look and design of the characters. Prime doesn't have to necessarily transform into a truck, nor does Bumblebee have to transform into a Volkswagen Bug. And I think the same thing can also apply for if they ever do Decepticons. You don't have to worry about shifting things around to accommodate an alternate mode. You can just put out a really posable, super detailed figure, which they've done so far in this line. A big thank you, though, to the folks over at Threezero that did provide this sample of the Autobot leader, Optimus Prime, the new MDLX Optimus Prime, which again is slated to drop the second quarter of 2022. And the price point for this guy is going to be $79.99. What do you guys think of the figure? Let me know down below in the comments section. And if you, of course, are new to this channel, you're enjoying the content that you're seeing, and you haven't already done so, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below, turn the bell notification on, and keep your transforming peepers peeled. While we have wrapped up things right now for Optimus Prime, there's definitely going to be a lot more videos coming your way. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.